The original cornerstone of Apple TV Plus's programming, the one that they hoped would get everybody to sign up back in November of 2019, The Morning Show, finally has a season 2 and episode 1 just dropped. We're going to recap it. We're going to review it. Let's talk The Morning Show. Hey guys, Dan here, and this is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my review and my recap for episode 1, season 2 of The Morning Show. Now, this is not a show I've talked about too much on my channel before. In fact, only really the one time I ever reviewed it, and that was back in November of 2019 when I did a big Is Apple TV Plus Worth It kind of review. And initially, the first 3 episodes of The Morning Show were up, so that's all I had to go off of. And I gave it, an okay grade, a B minus for those first 3 episodes, with the caveat that, well, it's sort of soapy, but it kind of knows what it is and leans into it. Well, that became a show that I watched every single week. When the new episode dropped Friday morning at midnight, Thursday night, I would watch it every single week. And for those of you that know me, I don't often do that. I'm usually a year or 2 behind on all the shows because I like to watch so many different things, and it's so hard to keep up. In fact, it's why I started doing the weekly TV review thing, so I could watch kind of everything that's coming out. But this is one of the shows that really got me, and I ended up watching it every single week. It was a lot of fun, and the soapiness factor and all of that. The show really does lean into it, so it knows what it is, and I do appreciate that. But yeah, other than the Connors, the Masked Singer, I don't typically do a lot of episode by episode reviews on this show, and part of that is because I'm usually a season or 2 behind on what's hot. So I thought this might be a fun one to do, and in fact I didn't even realize the new season was premiering today. I knew it was coming up, but at like 12:15 in the morning I got an alert on my phone from Apple TV saying like, hey, the new episode of The Morning Show's up. And I was like, oh my God, all right, well, I'm watching it then. And, if it's halfway decent, I'm going to review it. Maybe something fun to talk about on my channel. So hopefully you'll stay with me for the ride. I believe this season also has 8 to 10 episodes, somewhere in that range. Apple TV drops them every week. And they only dropped the first episode tonight. So it is going to go the 1 episode per week, the full term. So I don't know. It could be fun to talk about, so let's dive right in. So, first of all, it's been almost 2 years since the initial premiere of season 1. It's been over a year and a half since season 1 wrapped up, and a lot of that was due to COVID. They were going to hopefully, have a season 2 in the fall of 2020, but Apple TV actually was one of the first studios or whatever networks to shut down all of their production when COVID first hit. Within a few days, almost everybody else did, but Apple TV was one of the first that said, hold up, we're going to wait and see what's going on with the COVID-19. So they did get to film about a month worth before COVID hit, and then they resumed, when protocols were okay to do so. But what that means is I think the crowd stuff in this first episode, where they're at New Year's Eve, I think a lot of that stuff is probably legit and not CGI. I think they probably got to film that, since it is the first episode of the season, before the shutdown. And so I should preface up front, we are going to be talking spoilers. I like to sort of, when we do these, like the Roseanne and Connors episodes and stuff, I really kind of dive in on the characters and dive in on what's going on with the plots. And so if you have not seen episode 1 yet of The Morning Show for season 2, check it out and then come on back and we'll talk about it. So when we last saw everybody, basically Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon playing here Bradley Jackson and Alex Levy, they basically just verbally blew things up on The Morning Show. They had enough of the hypocrisy and the nonsense and the people not necessarily getting in trouble for sexual assault and stuff like that. And so they just went off on the network and on the behind the scenes stuff with the show. So that's kind of what happened at the end of season 1. And if you sort of forgot, because it has been so long, I've only seen these episodes once, so I did sort of forget some of the more nuanced things. They give you a 5-minute recap of season 1 before this episode. You can skip it if you want to. They have that little skip button for it. But I think, unless you really remember that well, I would watch it, because it was very informative to me. It kind of reminded me where we were. So this first episode of season 2 kicks off pretty much right after that, sort of the blow up of that. And the Billy Crudup character, Corey, is basically getting fired. And they've decided to have Fred, played by Tom Irwin, the president of the network. They've just kind of reprimanded him to everybody's shock, because he was sort of helping cover up the Mitch stuff, Steve Carell's character, with all of that. So slap on the wrist for him. So then we fast forward about 8 months to, which would be like the summer of 2020, and we see all these desolate streets of New York. So, okay, I imagine COVID may factor in somewhere this season, because we did see that. But then right away, they bring us a few months earlier to New Year's Eve 2019 into 2020, so pre-COVID and all of that stuff. And that's where we spend the rest of this episode. The episode ends pretty much right at midnight when the ball drops. So at this point in time, Alex, Jennifer Aniston's character, has left the morning show. And that left Bradley alone to sort of have a rotating cast of co-hosts, kind of like they did with Kelly Ripa, when Michael Strahan left. They just sort of cycled things through, and the ratings have been down. We find out that Billy Crudup's character, Corey, has been reinstated at the network, and Bradley was a big part of him getting that job back. We don't necessarily know how. Maybe they'll dive into that later in the season. I don't know. But in any event, so the current co-host of hers, played by Hassan Minhaj, they're doing a lot of fun things, and they're singing and dancing, and the ratings are up a bit from what they've been. And all of a sudden, the evening news anchor, well, he gets busted now with some harassment charges, so he's out, and Bradley thinks she might be the right one for the job. And I kind of, at this point, think of her as like that sort of Katie Couric type, went from the morning show on the network to doing the nightly news, and, doing a good job of it. I'm not even sure if that was actually the same network that Katie did both morning and evening on. But in any event, she's obviously, a perky person. That was sort of the whole thing about her personality. And I think Bradley kind of falls under that category. I'm not sure if that's specifically what they're going for, but that's kind of how I feel about the character. But she finds out from Corey that, Hassan Minhaj, his character, he's gonna be out on the morning show, and to her surprise, he is actually going to take over the evening news. He doesn't tell her that until, nobody has told her that until Hassan Minhaj himself breaks the news. And I forget his character's name, so I apologize that I just keep saying Hassan Minhaj. But anyway, when they're prepping for their New Year's Eve telecast, he tells her, he says, look, I can't keep this a secret anymore. I feel like you and I are friends. Like, I want to tell you this. And so she is, of course, floored. Corey shows up, and she flies off at him. I'm sort of jumping around a little bit, because that doesn't happen till the end of the episode. But in any case, that's sort of what happens with them. And so the episode leaves, and she's very pissed off at him. But now, where does Jennifer Aniston come into it? Well, Alex has been writing a memoir, and she finishes it up the first time we see her in this episode. And she, ships it off to her whoever, the editor or somebody at the book publication, and says, look, it's fine, but you're not really diving into the Mitch stuff. We want to hear more about that. That's why everybody's going to buy this book. Plus, other books are going to come out about this incident. Don't you want yours to be the first? Don't you want you to have your say rather than responding to something? And so she kind of blows that off, goes to a New Year's Eve party at her buddy's house where there's Kathy and Jimmy playing, we love her, playing a psychic and, getting all these sort of things wrong. But one thing she says is, you've been running from something. What are you scared of? What are you running from? In the meantime, Billy Crudup has come to Alex's, farm or loft or wherever really she's living and saying, look, we want you back at the morning show. We're going through some changes. Bradley needs somebody like you. She blows it off and says no. After the psychic, she returns a phone call from Corey and says, you know what? Let's talk tomorrow, this and that and the other thing. And he says, look, do this temporarily before we get you your own primetime show. Now, whether that's just blowing smoke, we don't know. But that's essentially most of the things going on in this episode. We don't see Steve Carell's Mitch character at all, but he's still in the opening credits. He's still listed as a cast member, so obviously we will be seeing more of him as the season progresses. But you know what? I think it was smart to not have him in this episode because the stories at UBA, the network, don't really involve him anymore. He's not in it, for any reason. He's been fired. In fact, they obviously bring him up in this episode when the producers are sort of going over what should be in the year-end highlight reel for UBA. They say, oh, what about so-and-so? What about such and such? And they say, yes, let's put one of the highlights from, Alex and Bradley's sort of, on-air tirade. Let's put something with that, and let's, sort of sweep Hannah under the rug. Hannah is played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw from season 1. She is dead at the end of that season, she was the talent booker on the show, and they said, oh, let's, kind of sweep that under the rug. That's sort of a downer, for the New Year's show. And she makes sure to not mention Mitch at all. She's like, don't put Mitch in the package at all. Don't even talk about him, whatever. So he's certainly there and all around, but I don't think he needed to be in this episode. I think the Steve Carell character for this, because he is so kind of slimy and everything, I think from season 1, he is sort of better in smaller doses. So, maybe 2 out of 3 episodes he's in or something. And I think that worked very well. In the first season, maybe he was in every one just because, it was more Mitch-centric, whereas here it's more of the aftermath. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But obviously, Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character, Hannah, is not in it either because she passed away in the first season. But at the very, very end of this episode, we see a ticker going across Times Square that says, more bad news for UBA. Hannah's family is going to be suing them, for her death. So that obviously, Corey's having this big roller coaster at the end. Bradley's pissed at him. Alex is maybe playing nice with him and might want to come back to the morning show. And then he sees that on the ticker about Hannah. So it's like real up and down for Corey at the end of this episode. And by the way, and I've said this several times, in fact, when we talked about the Emmys and the Golden Globes, when I did my predictions, Billy Crudup, I love him in this role. I think, he's an okay actor, whatever. I've seen him in a couple of things here or there. But I'm not sure if Billy Crudup is necessarily an A-list star. Is he a marquee movie name? No. But I think he's somebody people know. And I think maybe people don't give him the credit he deserves because he's excellent in this. He really is, I think, one of the best, characters in this. And Crudup really sort of brings the sizzle with that. Now, we don't see Tom Irwin's character at all, Fred. So, we see at the beginning that he was placed on, well, I guess we see him in that first scene, but he's placed on, administrative leave or whatever, slap on the wrist. But we don't see him at all. He's probably not with the network anymore. We don't really know what happened. I imagine they're going to dive in deeper to some of those themes. So, here are the things I didn't really like in this episode. I always like Kathy and Jimmy, but I think it was a little bit hokey that the bad psychic is what made Alex sort of reconsider and change her mind. Maybe it would have been different if she was a good psychic and she was really, reading into Alex's life, properly and making a believer out of her, but she was saying things like, oh yeah, you're in a big relationship and you're married. And she's like, no. Oh, you have a kid. Yes. Oh, okay. It's, she says the gender and the gender's wrong. It's like nothing she said matched up. And Alex isn't really a believer anyway in that psychic stuff, as we find out. So, like, why would she say one thing at the end that made Alex be like, oh, wow, you really get me now, yep, I'm on the run. Look, it's such a vague thing to say. I think everybody's probably running from something, right? So, we sort of take from a psychic what we put into it, I feel like. But I think they kind of played that a little bit corny. Also, I when the clock strikes midnight and everybody's kissing and everybody's singing Auld Lang Syne and all of this stuff, they're not just going to break the news at midnight on New Year's that Hannah's family is suing the network, right? So I didn't really believe that part either. But other than that, I'm so happy the show is back. Those were really my only two like negatives. I think everything else, it's hard to say so far because obviously this is just setting up the whole rest of the season. So it's even kind of hard to grade episodes like this, of a show like this. Like I do grades for my Connors episodes, but that's a sitcom. It's played a little differently. Yes, there's sort of running threads sort of underlying throughout each season or whatever on a show like that. But a show like this where it's really serialized and every episode sort of hinges on what came in the last episode. So some episodes are just more for building up and sowing the seeds of what the season will be and what future episodes will be. And look, after being off for over a year and a half, I think this episode did that. I think it really sowed those seeds where we needed them. So what am I most intrigued about? Certainly how Bradley is going to take the news that now Alex is coming back, because she was approached earlier in the episode and said, hell no, I've been there, done that. We're good, so I think she's going to be even more pissed at Corey about that. We didn't see a ton of Mark Duplass's character in this episode, a little bit, but he's one of my favorites too, along with Billy Crudup, so I want to definitely see more of him. What was his character's name? Chip. He's the executive producer on the morning show, so love seeing him and would like to see more there. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I think this episode did what it needed to do to create intrigue for what this season will entail. I do think they threw that shot in there about the empty streets of New York early on in the episode to let us know that, okay, they're going to be going into 2020 here with this season. We're going to be talking about COVID or something in that vein. Even though they didn't discuss it at all in this particular episode, but it was pretty clear to me that they're sort of setting the stage for that. So a lot of stage setting here, and I think it went off very well. I would say, so I gave that initial run of 3 episodes a B- when I did my Is Apple TV Plus Worth It video. And as I watched the episodes subsequently, I think overall I would have given that season probably like a B+ by the end of it, because I think they really ramped up like each episode. I think it was episode maybe 5 or 6 where I was just like, I think it was the one with Martin Short. That might have been episode 5, where he plays sort of like a version of kind of a Weinstein, who was sort of, on Mitch's side. Oh, Mitch, you didn't do anything wrong and stuff. I was like, okay, I'm all in on this show. And I love Martin Short anyway, but yeah, that was a good episode. So overall, I think this kind of does fall somewhere in that range. But again, it's hard when you're just setting the stage in an episode. But I think this had a lot of drama in it, a lot of good scenes. It's great to see all these characters back again. I really think, look, Apple TV Plus has some of the best shows on streaming. Obviously, Ted Lasso, we know that. But, Mythic Quest is great. Servant, the episodes I've seen of that is very good. A lot of their movies are great. I think Apple TV Plus, for only $5 a month, is one of the best services out there, even though they don't have a library of like old, sitcoms or old dramas or whatever like a lot of the other ones do. it is also the cheapest one out there, so that helps too. But I think their original programming is great, and I think this is, one of them that sets them apart a little bit from some of the competitors. So anyway, we'll cap it there. I'm going to leave this episode of The Morning Show with a B. I think there are a lot of good things to come in this season, and I can't wait to talk about them with you. If you watched this episode, please comment below with your thoughts. Let me know where you think the season is going. What do you want to see happen? Where do you want to see the Mitch storyline go from here? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please do that too. I'd love to have you aboard for that. And maybe we'll see you next week then for episode 2 of The Morning Show. Thanks for watching. Bye.